So what's going on, guys? I am Black Ops Amazing. Welcome back to another zombies video. We are back with a zombies Q&A, the series where I take your questions from the comment section below to do with the zombies storyline, Easter eggs, and I answer them. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, a like rating would be appreciated if you want to. If not, it's totally fine. Thank you guys for watching anyway. Make sure you are subscribed, but let's get into it. Here we go. Enjoy. So the first question of the day from says, why do the characters always lose their weapons when going to each map? For example, why didn't they have the KT-4 on Blood of the Dead or the bows on Zetsubo? So in Zombies, I suppose you could say there are lots of questions that you could ask similar to this one. Not really to do with the storyline or Easter egg, but things that logically just don't really add up. But of course, since it's just a game, questions like this we don't really ask. We just say to ourselves, well, it's a game, that's what happens. Every time our characters go to a new map location, we start off with a pistol. They don't take the weapons from the previous location with them, which, if you think about it, would be very OP if that was the case. By the time they got to Revelations, they would have over 20 weapons collected from every map. I suppose you could say it just wouldn't make sense for them to carry them, they wouldn't be able to. Maybe there is a reason behind it that Treyarch haven't told us, I doubt it. It could be that every time they teleport to a new location they lose their weapon, or does it have something to do with Dr. Monty? I don't know, it doesn't really make too much sense because we know in, for example, Black Ops 2, when Victus were travelling from Die Rise to Buried, they didn't teleport there, they walked there over days. And so for that, I don't think there's a reason behind it. With this, just like other questions, we have to say it's a game. If we were to carry on with weapons that we used before, it wouldn't really be a challenge. The next question says, how do you think Black Ops 5 Zombies will begin? Now, this all depends whether or not we are going to get an Aether reboot of Zombies. There have been rumours, there have been, I wouldn't say leaks as of yet. If we was to get leaks, then they would probably come next year around March time as they usually do, but we don't know if we're going to get an Aether reboot. Personally, if you're asking me, I'm like 50-50, I think we will. Maybe that's more hope, but we definitely know there'll be a continuation of the Chaos story. Treyarch said last year that was season 1, so you would assume there will be a season 2, and of course the Chaos story, the way it ended on a cliffhanger, it only makes sense that it will be continuing in that game. So let's just say in this case, Aether is fully over, there's no reboot, and in Black Ops 5 or whatever Treyarch's next game is going to be, it will just be the Chaos story. How do I think it will begin? Well, where we last left off in Ancient Evil, we saw in the ending cutscene, the Oracle was revealed to be Medusa, where we saw her do something to Scarlet. Now, we don't know if she's dead or if she's just unconscious, but she did fall to the floor and we didn't see her wake up. Also, Bruno and Alistair were turned into members of the cult. They were killed and then came under their control. It was also revealed to us that Scarlet's father had been turned to stone, and the only one of our characters left alive was Diego. Throughout the whole Chaos story, their whole journey involved them finding Scarlet's father, Alistair. He had been kidnapped by the cult, and so Scarlet gathered some of his old friends who were Bruno, Diego and Shaw, and they went through the maps tracking him down until they eventually got to Ancient Evil, where these events unfolded. And now that they've finally found him, that mission is complete, although he is turned to stone. But it was revealed at the end, Medusa's whole plan was to open the library and make the world hers. More than likely, the library she was on about was the one of Alexandria, the largest and most significant of the ancient world. How exactly she's going to use that to make the world hers, and also what she means by that really. Possibly turning everyone into a member of the cult, meaning she is able to control humanity. It's a difficult one to answer because we don't really know that much about the Chaos story. We've only had one game, and that was shared between two different stories. And also, who are we going to be playing as? Because the only character right now is Diego. He is the only one alive. Scarlet is dead or unconscious, and Bruno and Shaw are members of the cult. We could be playing as them because Bruno was a member of the cult much before that in Voyage of Despair. So unless they somehow wake Scarlet up, we might have to find a character to replace her. But definitely let me know your thoughts about how you think the Chaos story will continue in the comment section below, and if Aether is to return, because I still think there's a chance if Activision believe, or maybe even Treyarch believe, that Chaos isn't going to do good enough. There is a lot of interest in it, but nowhere near as much as the Aether storyline. You can just tell that with videos, trailers, and obviously Treyarch will know with downloads and numbers on maps. So if Chaos isn't big enough, and we all know Aether is, then there is a possibility of a reboot at the end of the day if Activision tell them to do it, then it could happen. We've seen with the Modern Warfare series, we all thought we can't carry on with that. After Modern Warfare 3, there was really nowhere to go with the storyline. However, if you reboot something, meaning you start the story over completely again, but you use a lot of things from the older games, for example, the older characters return, but their premise, their origins, their story is different. With Modern Warfare, it isn't linked to the past games. It has nothing to do with COD 4, Modern Warfare 2 or 3, even though it shares the same characters, Price, Nikolai. We hear about Task 1, Force 1 and other things. The way in which Task 1 Force 1 is created, Price's backstory and his future could be totally different to what we saw in MW 1, 2 and 3. It seems like if we do get Black Ops 5, then the whole game, not just zombies, will be a reboot. I did play the Black Ops 3 campaign, but I can't remember any of it. That story massively confused me. But with Black Ops 2, our main story really ended there anyway, so if they're going to carry on with the Black Ops series, I believe it will have to be a reboot because there's nowhere else to go. But anyway, let's just say next year, 2020, Treyarch make Black Ops 5, Zombies is rebooted, the Aether storyline returns. How do I think it will go down? Well, it could be two instances. Either it is a totally new take, or old characters return. We play as Richtof and Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey again. However, their backstory will be different. Whilst the storyline might share similarities from the old Aether one, we might hear of things like Element 115, maybe Dr. Monty will be mentioned somewhere in the background, but these things could be different. This time Dr. Monty could just be a normal person, not a god. Element 115 could be some sort of different chemical, not a meteor that comes from the sky. These things could be referenced, but they don't have to have the same impact as they did before. Group 935 might not exist. The way the zombie outbreak starts could be totally different. Richtofen might not be a German doctor. There are so many changes you can make with a reboot. The main thing I loved about Aether was the characters, Richtofen, Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey. Really, anything else you could work around. So a reboot with those characters for me would be very interesting. Or it could be totally fresh, where we play as a brand new set of characters. Maybe Element 115 is involved. Possibly that's what starts zombies. It could be something else. This time around we don't have Monty, the Shadow Man, the Apothecans. It could be like us starting from World at War all over again, just with a new set of characters, starting off on their new story as we go along and learn it. That'd be something I'd love to see as well. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. We are definitely having chaos. I think there's a 50-50 chance we will get a reboot of Aether, but whether or not we play as the same characters, I don't know. And the final question or questions, actually I don't even know if I call it that, but there was a comment that I thought was really interesting in one of my previous videos, where Doomslayer said, "Am I the only one that finally sees the link between Nikolai and the Weasel in Mob of the Dead? The Weasel broke their cycle and Nikolai his." And that's a really interesting way of looking at it. I can kind of see what you're saying. In Mob of the Dead, the mobsters were trapped in their own cycle in Purgatory, and in the two different endings that they have, you can either break the cycle by the Weasel getting revenge on the mobsters and killing them, or continue the cycle by doing the opposite. And then of course with our Provis and Ultimus crew, it is ultimately Nikolai, just like the Weasel, who breaks his cycle by destroying the multiverse. So in that sense, Nikolai and the Weasel are the same. They both break their own cycles, but it still doesn't really tell me why the Weasel knows Nikolai's name in Mob of the Dead. He has a famous quote in that map where he says, "Nikolai, Nikolai, Nikolai, why do I keep hearing that name?" That for me still doesn't really explain as to why he knows that. Yes, they've both broken cycles, even though it happened after he says this quote, but that wouldn't cause him to know Nikolai's name, so we still haven't had an explanation for that. And then I also thought the reply to this comment was interesting, because you say, "I know everything about the Aether story except from these following things. The rest of the Templar premise crew in the story of DLC 4, except from Richtofen, who was sent to Blood of the Dead to break the cycle." So I believe what you're asking here is, what happened to the Great War versions of Nikolai, Takeo and Dempsey? We know that Great War Richtofen escaped and travelled to Blood of the Dead, but what happened to the rest of the characters? And again, a good question, because we don't know, we aren't told. They should still be trapped in the Great War, but without Richtofen, there's really no guessing as to what happened to them. We do know as part of the cycle, they died at the Great War and then were reborn again hundreds of years later, so they could have gone on to die at the Great War once Richtofen left, or maybe they survived because the cycle had now been broken, events had changed. And you also say the only loading screens that make no sense are the ones from Die Rise and also the Ascension remake. I have recently done a video going over those loading screens again. Although you are right, some of them don't make 100% sense. It's really up to your own interpretation. There are some ciphers and revelations that are unsolved, which is untrue. In fact, there are loads of ciphers in Zombies that aren't solved. I think one's in Black Ops 4 at the beginning, because during the end of BO4 there was no ciphers in Tag der Toten and Alpha Omega that went on, which is very disappointing. But there are still ciphers in Classified and Blood of the Dead that aren't solved, and even ones in Black Ops 3, Revelations, The Giant. I think there are some really juicy ciphers that we just don't have information to. If we solve them, there could be things we find out that we don't know right now. And then you also say mysteries left, Group 601 and Bus Route B, possibly DLC 5 Green Run, and also the Amelia name in Kino der Toten. So yes, Group 601 is a mystery. Bus Route B, I honestly don't think there was really ever anything behind it. And then the Amelia name in Kino der Toten, personally, I just think that's Samantha's middle name. But a lot of things that are left unsolved in Zombies, a lot of mysteries that we have left, because there's not that many. Most of what we have is left down to theories, so there we go. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed today's video. If you have, you know what to do, drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content on the channel. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.